Yeah, my name is Jessica Hepburn, and I describe myself as an author, arts producer, and adventure activist.
Brilliant. It's very succinct. And there's a lot to unpack in those three
Yeah,
words,
so
three phrases.
exactly. So we won't do that, Kate. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. But we can unpack it as part of the conversation, I'm sure.
Amazing. So let's just dive straight into the first question of what does being strong mean to you?
Hmm. Do you know what, Kate? I was thinking about these questions that you sent to me, and obviously, one of the things that's interesting about life is that, like, if you'd asked me this last week when we were originally due to meet, because we were originally had this meeting set up for last week, and then we had to reschedule. And if you'd asked me this question last week, it would have been different to what it is today. So today, my answer to that question is very related to the fact that a dear friend and former colleague of mine died on Wednesday morning, and she was 44 years old, too young to die, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer 2 years ago, and she actually told me that when I was at Everest Base Camp. So that's a nod to the arts adventure, the adventure activist part of my job. I was at Everest, and she sent me this text saying that she was had just been diagnosed, and she's lived, like I have a mantra in life, which is live big and brave, and she's lived so big and bravely over the last 2 years. And so being strong to me today means being Imogen and living like you're going to die, you know? Um, and I hope that's okay to say, but I think she died tragically, but really well. It was a beautiful death. And so that is what being strong to me means today.
Wow, that's really powerful. And yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about Imogen, but she sounds like a beautiful woman.
Oh, yeah. And I've just posted about her on Instagram, actually. So, I mean, obviously, this will probably come out in a while, but, please go and check out my Instagram account and hers to read about her.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and this one person described death, said, if we viewed life through the lens of death, we'd see it as stand-up comedy and we wouldn't
Yeah.
be as significant. And I really think what you've said encapsulates that
Yeah.
living like we're going to die every day is actually the
Yeah.
most wholesome and life fulfilling experience we can be and do.
Exactly. And actually, this is a nod to the other part of my job description, the author bit. Like my new book, my third book has just come out, Save Me from the Waves. And actually, that is a quote from the book. Yeah, living like you're going to die. Because I too have faced death, but in a very different way from Imogen. But
Mm.
maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and thank you for bringing the depth straight into the first question as well. But the next question is, can you share an experience when you had to be strong, and how
Yeah.
did you handle it?
Well, that leads nicely on to yeah. So in 2022, I mean, I'm assuming your listeners don't know anything about me. Why would they? But in 2022, I became the first woman to achieve the C Street Summit Challenge, record breaker like you, Kate. Although, as you know, records mean, as I'm sure you'd agree, records mean everything and literally zero, right? Because they don't tell it, like they don't tell you about, you've got to work on what's going on inside you, right? That's the important thing. But anyway, I did become the first woman to swim the English Channel, run a road marathon, London, and summit Mount Everest. And actually, like that, the headline of that is that's really, amazing. I can see and triumphant. But actually, my final summit of Everest, and it took me 3 attempts to summit Everest. The first was a non-attempt because the mountain was shut in 2020 when I was first due to go due to COVID. And then I did go in 21 and couldn't summit. And then in 22, I did summit, but I was involved in a freak accident on the descent. And basically, the headline is that it was total freak accident, but I got hit by a free-falling oxygen bottle, but in the death zone at 8,000 meters where there's no helicopter rescue and your oxygen is running out. And And it was probably the hardest, well, the whole summit up and down, which was over a week in the end, was probably the hardest week of my life. And that was undoubtedly after the accident, the hardest 2 days of my life surviving. And in which I did look death in the face. In a very different way from Imogen, who's looked death in the face for 2 years and has been fighting death, but I looked it in the face for 2 days. And I had to be strong. And actually, again, I write this in my book, what I realized, and the breaking of the leg is like only the headline of the trauma that happened on the mountain. And but I realized up there that I wanted to live, and that if I was going to survive, my best chance was me. And I think that is probably one of the moments that I've been strongest in my life.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow. Choosing you and choosing life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I haven't bought your book yet because I did miss your book launch, but I will definitely be buying it because the 2 quotes you already said sound really, really intriguing.
Oh, thanks, Kate. But one thing I would say is that anyone coming to read my books, please be aware that they're alternative adventure stories. They are written by a woman, not a man, and most adventure stories in the world have been written by men. Yes, there is a touching the void element to my story, which is the most famous survival story, mountain survival story of all time. But actually, that isn't the major part of my story. It's a story of joy, and it's as much about music as it is about mountains, because it's about my journey to the top of the world, fueled by listening to every single episode of my favorite radio program, which is Desert Island Discs. So I just want to do a reading warning to people that it is an adventure story with a difference. And if that excites you, then I hope you'll like it. But if you think, no, I just want daring do and danger, I'm not the story for you.
That's what I like. I've just written my first book. It hasn't been published yet.
Yeah,
But
you
similar
told
to you,
me.
it's about my cycle, but it's not. It's about who I needed to become and the challenges of emotional barriers, why I was going to quit at this point and how I overcame me quitting rather than the kit or the distance or the cycle I did. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm very much more on the emotional side of things. What motivates us, our intrinsic journey, whilst we're pushing ourselves extrinsically.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we're pioneering the way, Kate. I'm looking forward to reading your book. When's it coming out? You said maybe this year.
Yeah, I'm self-publishing, so it's with my friends proofreading at the moment. I'm pushing for June, but it's a fake date. I might change that.
Yeah,
As if I made it up.
Yeah, you've set it so you push, so you've got a deadline to push yourself to. But yeah, great, fabulous.
Thank you. Well, you've touched on it a little bit, but about being an adventure activist and a woman, so there are certain expectations of that role that we've been imposed to believe this is what it looks like as a man. But how do you think societal expectations around women affect the concept of strength?
Yeah, well, I think is a really interesting question. Actually, I'm going to refer, I mean, when I was looking at these, you sent these questions in advance, Kate. I wasn't necessarily wanting to refer it to things in my book at all, but like, interestingly, my answer to this question does refer back to, so I said that I was listening to every episode of this radio show, which interviews famous people. It's the longest running UK radio show ever, about their life and about their musical choices, 8 discs that they take to a desert island. And one of the interviewees was Sheryl Sandberg, who was the COO of Facebook for many, many years, incredible woman, been through a lot of had to have a lot of strength. She lost, actually, it's interesting, isn't it, when there are themes in a conversation, but she lost her husband very suddenly when he was very young. And so she's had to have a lot of strength. And she gave me, in fact, one of the sort of key songs for my Everest summit, which was Elton John's "I'm Still Standing." she said this really interesting thing, which I really, it sort of hit home with me, which is that there are certain words that are sort of associated with strength, like words like, and I wrote a couple of them down, like bossy and angry, you know, which when used to describe women are really negative for some reason. So I was I was quite a bossy little girl, right, when I was a little girl, but I was led to believe that that wasn't a good thing. Whereas if I was if I was a man, I don't think that would be the case. And likewise, and I've imposed this on myself. I don't really like I don't really like the emotion of anger. I or fire, in emotion. I find that quite shameful. And I think again, that's a sort of, because women aren't supposed to feel those things. And I think in a way it's the same with strength, that to some extent it's not seen as a desirous quality in women necessarily. And we have to overcome all those sort of societal expectations when they are words that are used for us, which actually we think, well, you're using those words, but they're great words, but I don't think you're using them in a really positive way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. One of the ladies I've interviewed, she is a photographer, and she just did the independent, she photographed 10 of the top 50 most influential women of the world. And she said, without exception, the women were asking her to say, don't make me too pretty. Don't make
Right.
me stand up too much. And it's similar in the words you're using to describe that, people accept me because of X and Y, but don't make me too X or too Y because I'm going to be picked on.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
It's very powerful. And what do you think are some common misconceptions about strength that you've encountered?
Well, this is I wanted to give a slightly left field answer to this in relation to some of the challenges I've done. We've talked about these endurance challenges, and like what people say about these challenges, and I think this is true. And I mean, and it'd be interesting to know what your view on this is in terms of cycling, like these big endurance challenges, that they're both physical and mental. And there's a sort of, okay, so it'd be really interesting to see whether you agree with me on this, Kate. Like, there's a sort of idea or sort of idea propagated that endurance challenges, big endurance challenges, are 80% mental, 20% physical, right? That's what I've heard a lot, or certainly more mental than they are physical. And I think that is quite related to the fact that women are really, really good at mental endurance, I think. And men aren't necessarily so good, but men are stronger physically. And so somehow men have made these mental and physical endurance challenges sort of more about the mental, because they're showing how good they are at something that they're not naturally good at. And I just think that's wrong, actually. I feel like in life and in these endurance challenges that I've undertaken and say you've undertaken, that you need both, right, in equal measure. You need 50% physical strength and you need 50% mental strength. And the key to being successful with these challenges is working on the bit that you're weak at, And so I am mentally stronger. I'm not someone who like many women who sort of sings my praises loads, but I sing my praise on this, which is I'm mentally stronger than nearly anyone I know. Like if there was an Olympics for mental endurance, like I'd be on the podium, right? I've been through 11 rounds of IVF. That's where all these challenges came from, multiple miscarriages, then my relationship broke down, or everything that I've done in my life in terms of my adventures has come out of a lot of pain. And I'm mentally stronger than anything, but I'm not very physically strong. I'm an unlikely athlete. I'm an arty girl, not a sporty girl. That's why my book's about music. I ran a theatre for most of my career. So I had to work really, really hard on the physical strength because I'm shit at it. I'm really not good at it. And when I didn't summit Everest the second time, it was partly because of factors that are outside my control, like cyclones, and our Sherpa team got COVID. But I also realized that I wasn't ready, and I'd been relying too much on my mental strength, and I had to come back and I had to really get physically strong. So I would say that strength is both of those things, but you need them in life and in challenges in equal measure. And you always need to work on the thing that you're weaker at and not rely on the thing that you're stronger at.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think there's also an element, because you've got, like, I imagine, like, the yin and the yang, the black and the white,
Yeah.
the mental and the physical that we jump between. But the line that connects the two is the purpose, because you aren't just an adventurer. You're an activist.
Yeah.
You stand for something that brings the two worlds together and keeps it together too.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I
Well,
love that. I love that. I'm going to use that. The line and the yin and the yang. Wow. I love that. Is your purpose. Thank you, Kate. That's beautiful. I hope
thank
that's
you.
in your book. I hope that's in your
It's
book.
not. It'll be in the next one. I'm sure this won't be
No,
the
no,
first.
it's not too late. June is, as we've established, June isn't a real deadline.
Yeah,
Anyway,
very true. Yeah,
yeah,
well, the more we talk about the purpose, I reckon we can shift it. So you'll write it in your next book. I'll write it in this book, and because it
yeah,
came out of our conversation, it's not like we own
yeah.
it. But yeah,
And also, it's never fixed, right? These things are like I've been on this path of, well, I'm 53 years old. I've been on the path of my life for 53 years, but I've been on the path of this sort of job that I'm doing now for the last 10 years. And yeah, things, I'm always learning more, and I'm always sort of honing what I feel are my key learnings that I have to offer the world.
mm. Well, let's have a look at strength through a different lens. And how has your understanding of strength influenced your approach to goal setting and success?
Um, so, oh, that wasn't one of the questions you sent me. So I
Was
haven't
it
thought about
not?
this. No.
I'm
It's
so
totally
sorry.
fine. It's so there you go. It's totally fine. Can you just ask me the question
Yeah,
again?
of course. And yeah, I'm sorry.
No, don't worry.
How has your understanding of strength influenced your approach to goal setting and success?
I think I mean, I am a goal, I'm a list lover, I'm a goal setter. Um, I want to achieve things. I don't know that I necessarily associate those things with strength. I think that's why I'm struggling with the question. They achieving goals isn't something that I need to be strong to do, actually, if that makes sense, because I just want to do them. I want to do them. I have a passion to live the richest, in the face of the things I haven't been able to have or do in my life. I have a passion to live the biggest, bravest, richest life that I can live. And yeah, I don't really use my strength to do that. It's just me in flow, if that makes sense. I mean, I think the only thing that I would say is that, and in fact, I was leaving a voice note, like, I've had, like, I haven't had a great week this week. Obviously, I've talked about losing a friend, but there's a lot going on. I've got a 92-year-old mum who's been in hospital. I've got a building project that's happening that's, and if anyone has done a building project now, how stressful that is. And I've got a new book coming out into the world, which is like giving birth to a new baby, and is very vulnerable when you write about your own life, And I haven't had some brilliant days this week. And my best friend left me this message, and she sent me this lovely little gif, like with this Buddha guy going, like, sometimes you just have a shit day. Sometimes it's just a shit day and you just have to go, it's a shit day. That's it. Leave the day behind. And I just said to her, do you know what? That is true. That is true. But I also always want to sort of face the shit with strength. I would say that, and it is sometimes quite hard to do that. But like, yeah, my mantra is live big and brave. Your shit is your superpower. It is the way I live my life. And so even when it's hard, I want to turn the dirt into gold. That's what I'm driven to do.
Thank you. And sorry for putting you straight on the spot as well.
No,
Uh,
not at all.
yeah,
No, but it requires some thinking. These are great questions, Kate. And, I bring my whole self to everything I do. And I do loads of podcasts, loads of interviews. And it's one of the really interesting but terrifying things about it is being asked new questions, that you haven't been asked before. I mean, lots of times I get asked questions that have been asked a million times before, and I've got the answer to that. But what is really interesting is when someone asks you something slightly different and you have to think. And I just really want to think, I want to feel into it in my heart. Like, what's my heart saying about this? Could say something different next week. But also then I have to apologize to your listeners that then I do get a bit waffly, and because I'm trying to work out what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I do the same. I do the same. But it's important to show the workings out as well. Like, it's not a finished product.
Yeah. I don't like it though. I don't like, again, I'm being really honest here. I think that's why I'm a writer, because when I'm writing a book, that's my happiest place, and I can really control that. I can choose the words and I can go over them over and over again. And so what I present to the world is so considered and what I want to say. Whereas when I'm doing things like this and I'm struggling to work out what I want to say, it feels messy, and I don't like that. I really, but I have to be strong and do it, right? Because I want to get my work into the world, my message into the world. So I have to get over the fact that I don't really like doing interviews like this. It's not how I like to present myself, because I often come away feeling, oh, Jessica, why did you say that? Anyway, go on.
Well, I've invited you back on many occasions, so obviously I think you're quite good. But yeah, just to give you reassurance, it doesn't stop how you feel. It just means, to
Yeah,
give
yeah,
you a
yeah.
little bit of a work through. And from your own experience, could you share a tip or technique for developing and nurturing strength?
Well, I'd sort of like refer back to what I've said, really, which is, like work out what strength, like if you imagine there's mental strength and physical strength, work out what you're weakest at and focus on that. And yeah, you've got to do the things. Like I'm going to go back to your thing about yin and yang, really, which is you've got to, I really believe as human beings that life is best when we focus on two things. We focus on the things that bring us joy, and I don't think we do enough of that. And I have definitely made a conscious decision to make this my 50s, my decade of joy, because I actually spent most of my life working really, really hard and didn't have a lot of joy. And so now I really prioritize that. But I equally believe that you've got to do the things in life that are hard sometimes, in order to have the richest life, to get the most from this short life. So I think my tip would be not like you need to go away and do X, Y, and Z, other than look into your heart and go, am I, am I on the strength piece? Am I doing enough to build the strength that I'm weakest at, emotionally or physically?
Yeah, and it doesn't just give the individual the place to, like, my weaknesses will be different to yours.
Yeah.
But it means on a day by day and a week by week basis as well. Like, as you said, last week would have been very different in what
Yeah.
you needed to nurture versus this week.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think, the strength is to be able to really listen to what your instincts are saying, And I think lots of people don't.
So yeah, my own weird quirkiness is I asked the first question last as well. So
Yeah.
Jessica, what does being strong mean to you?
Well, I would say I would go back, I would repeat. I love a repeat. So I'd say living like you're going to die. But then I would also say it means my two mantras, which, well, live big and brave, which has been my mantra for many years now. And more recently, it's been joined by your shit is your superpower. And I think, that both of those things are what strength means to me.
Thank you so much. It's always a delight and an insight, and yeah, to hear your philosophy around what you've achieved as much as what you've done as well. So thank you so much for being one
Thank
of the
you, Kate,
45 strong.
and happy 45th birthday.